All right, what's up? Is this thing on? Okay, so we got a video today. We're talking about the two different forms of DNA. We got chromatin and chromosomes. Chromatin is the unpacked version when you are using it to make a protein. There's a couple of different steps in that process we'll go over in a second, but I want to contrast chromatin with chromosomes, which are the packed up version. So you got chromatin, which is your unpacked DNA, and then if you're trying to pack it up, of course, you would only pack stuff up if you're trying to move it. So if you want to move your DNA, that's if you're trying to make new cells. That process is called mitosis, where you start with one cell, you got to move some DNA to the left and the right, and then you got to split, and then you have two different cells, and they both have their own full set of DNA. And that process, of course, is more complicated, but that's the general gist of it. And what do you got to do with your DNA first? You got to pack it up into chromosome form. 23 pairs, 46 total if you're a human, okay? And that's when you are making new cells. Now, where does that happen in our body, right? That's happening a lot in our skin, primarily. That's everyone's favorite. Digestive system is just skin on the inside, so it gets damaged a lot. We need to replace it. And then blood, because you have white blood cells for immune system and you got red blood cells to carry oxygen around, those kind of get damaged a little bit. So as needed, that's going to be some pretty fast mitosis. Now, mitosis happening as fast as possible is going to be about 24 hours, okay? So where is it happening a little slower? Well, you do need to replace cells in other parts of your body, other organs, of the digestive system, other organs, bones, different things where you're going to be replacing things. But it's more of a slow process and kind of as needed with injuries, growth spurts, whatever. Now, where do we not really have mitosis occurring? That's brain and muscle. Now, why? Because we don't want baby brain cells, okay? We want full, developed, large, expansive trees, okay? We don't want to be planting the tree seed every month, every week, every year. We want the brain cells planted at birth to grow and develop, make their connections, become really, really good at their job of holding information, connecting information, and the same thing with muscles, okay? We want muscles to grow bigger, better, more mitochondria, more actin and myosin, more blood vessels, okay? They want to get really good at their job. So it's not really like we want to replace those often, and it's not really like they die that often. We protect those actually a lot because we have a hard time replacing them, okay? And that's where not much mitosis is occurring. Okay, so speaking of not much mitosis, that brings us to every other cell in your body. When you got cells in your body that are just living their life, doing their thing, they need to make proteins. Proteins do all the work inside of your cells and are all the structure of your cells. That's so important. We got to write that down. Proteins do all of the work inside of your cells, and that's called an enzyme. And then proteins also provide structure, both inside the cell and outside of the cell. So proteins are pretty freaking important. That's why DNA is the instructions to make proteins. So this nasty spaghetti is actually not so nasty. It's pretty nice. If it's safe inside of your nucleus, it can be unpacked in chromatin form. It is in the nucleus. It is unpacked, meaning it's ready to use, like any book that's unpacked. And you can take that book and you can open it up and you can build RNA off of it. And then that half letter of RNA built, that's called transcription. And then that is the first step in making a protein. So our first step, transcription, you take the DNA, you got to unwind it, open it up. RNA polymerase is going to build RNA on the exposed open book of DNA and make RNA from it, specifically mRNA, messenger RNA, because it's the message on how to make a protein. That is going to flow out of the nucleus and go find a ribosome. The ribosome could be on rough ER, or it could just be floating around in the cytoplasm, in the cell. Then, once it finds the ribosome is going to clamp down on it because it's a two-part structure. The ribosome has a top part, bottom part. It's going to clamp down. It's going to read your mRNA 3 letters at a time. It's called a codon. And then that is going to be translated into a protein made of amino acids, okay? Now, which amino acids in which order determines how big the protein is, what the protein does for function, whether it's an enzyme or a structural protein, but the ribosome is going to be responsible for making all of them. And that process is called translation, which happens later. So transcription happens first and translation happens later if you love making proteins. And that's what all cells in the body are just going to be doing all the time, just to like respond to whatever's happening in the world. Whether you are eating food and digesting nutrients, or whether you are creating waste, whether all the cells, all the organs, everything that's done in our body, whether your brain is firing signals, your muscles are growing with more structural proteins, digestive system has a lot of enzyme work. All cells, they need proteins to be made really often. And this is what happens when our DNA is unpacked in the nucleus as chromatin.